And now I'm going to hand it over to Mark Richman, who's going to talk about Gloss and working with PDFs in FileMaker. And we're so happy to have you today, Mark. So I will hand it over to you.
I'll dive right in with some of you. I don't know if anybody who's with us has seen this presentation or a version of this presentation before. I've done this a few times last year, both at our Midwest meetups and a few other meetups. DigFM, I was one of them. I did a Friday Live with Delph Engineering recently. I'm going to do something a little bit different today. I'm going to sprint through a shorter version of the slides, dive right into demoing across multiple platforms and give you guys a chance to log in as well and play with Gloss yourselves. And then I'm going to demo kind of live an add-on that we've created to make it simpler to add Gloss to your solution, which I haven't shown anyone. It's really, it's in beta. We're still troubleshooting it, but it works. And so it'll get more polished than what you're going to see. But the hope is that it will demonstrate the ease with which you can add the basic functionality to the solution and then take it apart and incorporate it into what you're doing. But all of this is obviously out of context. So let me go ahead and get right into sharing my screen and showing you guys all about Gloss. So let me do this now. You should be seeing, you're seeing the big browser with your Menti. Yeah, excellent. And then I'm going to switch over to my PowerPoint and I'm going to hit play. There's not a lot of PowerPoint and I'm going to zip through it really quickly. So what is Gloss? It's a better way to view, search, and annotate PDFs without leaving FileMaker. So we're going to talk about why we created it. Container fields are pretty good. I used to have slides here at the beginning, and I'm just going to ask them informally. So find that button on your Zoom to raise your hand so we can kind of see who's affected by this. But I'm going to ask a series of questions. You can just leave your hand up if it applies to you. Raise your hand if you use container fields in your FileMaker solutions. And I'm thinking I'll see the hands in the participants list. I don't know if I will. I can't see anybody because of the way that PowerPoint takes over my screen. So there we go. Keep your hands up or your thumbs up if you use PDFs in those container fields. And keep them up if you, it really only sounds like about half of you or a third of you actually use containers and actually put PDFs in those container fields. For those of you who do, keep those hands up if you think it's an excellent experience using those PDFs in those container fields and you can do everything you wished you could do with those PDFs. I see 0 hands. All right. So that's what we experienced. No matter where you use container fields and PDFs, it was inconsistent, right? It depended on whether you're using Pro or Go or WebDirect. It depended on whether you're on Mac or Windows. It depended on whether you had Acrobat or some version of the Adobe Toolkit installed. There was just all these variables, and you'd get very different experiences depending on what you use. In fact, when you launch Gloss, you get a series of little screenshots we took in all of those examples to kind of show how dramatically different it can look and what the experience could potentially be. It rarely, in most of those cases, supports searching. So sometimes you just see the PDF and you can scroll, but you very rarely can actually search the text if there's a text layer and actually search and interact with the PDF directly. You might be able to if you had some other Adobe product licensed on the machine and it was being recognized by FileMaker, but not always. The workarounds for being able to interact with those PDFs are complex. Sometimes they involved other applications and manipulating and pushing the PDF to and from and launching and pulling things back in, or they involved various workarounds we saw with people piping things into web viewers and doing things that were kind of like we saw various technologies for drawing and interacting with them, but they were all somewhat limited. They were somewhat difficult to implement, and we knew it needed to be easier. It can also be really slow if you have a really large PDF, gigabytes of data, hundreds or thousands of pages, lots of text. That scrolling and interacting and searching and other things, even if you had it, can be slow. And of course, you generally can't annotate. That you need an external app for, whether it's an Acrobat or a Preview or a PDF viewer of some kind on Windows. You needed some kind of other app to facilitate the markup you might want to do. And what we discovered also is that that's all well and good, even if you could get past those things like scrolling really quickly and searching the text and annotating. If you got to page 27 and you said, I want to connect this to a record in FileMaker, I want to assign this to someone for a follow-up, I want to categorize these passages of text or these pages of instruction or whatever was in your PDF to something in your workflow in your FileMaker record, that was a no-go. Like the the space that was showing you the PDF, whatever tool you might be using, usually container field, was really a bubble inside of a record. It wasn't actually the content somehow available to the record or records elsewhere in the solution to point to them. And so getting that kind of finding and then using and then passing along and storing was really impossible to do. So we created a tool that lets you do all these things. It gives you a much better experience than container fields or workarounds. It's consistent in the user interface across all the different platforms, all the different operating systems, and all the different kinds of FileMaker client. It offers server-side rendering, so it's way faster. It's basically rendering the pages and sending them to you. So you can jump to page 217 and it just loads it. It's not like you're waiting for it to load all that content and stream it until it actually catches up and gets to page 217. There's a search facility built in. As long as there's a text layer in your document, you can search against it. It has a full suite of annotation tools. They are like any PDF technology, a core set of tools that we're familiar with, like text and shape and colors and objects and drawing. And then there's some that are unique to this tool, just like there are some that are unique to Preview and other tools. But conceptually, you'll see a lot of the familiar annotations you're used to using. You can actually customize the UI. So we've enabled the ability to kind of choose which tools you want to show. Maybe so certain users, when they show the PDF, will only see certain things and others would see other tools, so that you could limit by privilege set or script action exactly what you actually want to enable someone to do, view, edit, or edit only using certain functionality. And even the ability to say, make these edits permanent. Take all those annotations and flatten them into the PDF and make it not just a layer of annotations, but part of the document, so that you have something that's a bit more akin to like an archive or a copy of a modified document. And most importantly, we wanted to make it really easy to integrate. So we're going to talk a little bit later about how we came to this tool, like what client problem we were solving. But when it comes to what Gloss is, when we productized that solution for those clients, these were the parameters that we were focusing on. You know, better to use it everywhere, really fast, reliable, full annotation with some control over what goes to who, and real easy ability to integrate it. So we have instructions that show how to copy and paste different parts of it, like we've seen before when you buy a FileMaker edition or solution that you kind of says, copy these fields, copy these scripts. But more recently, as I was mentioning before we started today's session, I'm going to demo an add-on that will really make it literally a drag and drop process. It's a beta add-on, so you have to manually run a script to initialize it. But once you do, the same functionality you're going to see in this demo will then be in your file without you having to copy and paste anything. And then you can start to decide how you want to incorporate it into your solution, depending on what you already have or not. So the basics of how it works from a technology standpoint is we have a container field and we have an API on a server that effectively takes that container field data and sends it to your web viewer, so that you can do the interactions I've been talking about. And then once you're done making those interactions and changes, those annotations, the searching, whatever it is you want to do, if you've made any changes, send it back to the API so that it can return the modified document to your container field. You've got a lot of control as a developer over exactly what this sequence is. We set it up so it's just a round trip. But we have a client, for example, who's implemented this, where they said, look, when I send that original up there and bring it back modified, I'm going to put it into a different folder that kind of starts to store versions and just keep that original pristine. Or maybe I'll leave it there until at some point someone flattens it and says, this is the new master, and there's some kind of process that does that. So the demo is very literal, round trip. The technology is effectively round trip, but you as the developer will control which container field is the source, and what are the triggers and business rules that decide whether or not it goes back there or it goes somewhere else. So enough talk. I live in Missouri. Let's show you how it works. So I'm going to start with a local file that's just sitting on my hard drive. And I need to move to the right screen for you. So this is the Gloss demo file. I'm going to minimize all this stuff in the background. You'll see some pretty background picture. And like I said before, when you open up the Gloss demo file, it just shows you examples of, the differences. Like this is the same PDF shown in Pro and Go and WebDirect, dramatically different experiences, depending on what client I'm using. And you get the same set of tools. It's really hard to see this without zooming in, but you get the same display. You get the same toolbar of commands for searching and manipulating and interacting with them. with Gloss. We give a little bit of a tip here screen about, what we've built into the demo. Obviously, the demo file is meant to demo the technology, but it is only an example of how you might express that technology in your actual user interface. So, we have a master detail view where we have a list of documents you can upload and put PDFs in and give them maybe some descriptions or names. And then when you click on one, it'll load it into the web viewer where you can do some of that basic interactions or you can annotate. And so we kind of give you a little cheat sheet here in case the interface isn't intuitive when you get there. We show you what the annotation screen looks like by comparison to the viewing screen. And then lastly, we give you a little bit of instructions about what to expect when you hit this Get Started button. So jumping really sideways in case people want to play along for themselves, if you go to skeletonkey.com and go to skeletonkey.com/gloss, come on, website, you will get to this screen where you can watch a little video demoing Gloss and read about what Gloss can do and fill out this form, which will send you an email, which will let you download the demo file, the exact same demo file I'm looking at, but it'll be local to you. And then when you open it and see those very same screens I just walked you through and get here and hit Get Started, it'll ask you for your email address, and then it'll send you back an API token, a unique token that's specific to you and your demo, and that is good for some of the limits you saw here. We want you to be able to use this for a month. We want you to be able to put up to 100 PDFs in there. We want you to put some big PDFs up there for up to 200 megs. And the only thing we're going to do other than put those limits in is we're going to put a little watermark on the first page of your PDFs that technically you could take the PDF out and remove the watermark, but every time you use the tool, it's going to keep putting that watermark back on there. If you choose to license Gloss, it'll get rid of that watermark. And so you won't have to struggle with that anymore. And then these other limitations effectively go away. I think we may have like a 500 meg limit on the PDFs, maybe just for sanity's sake, but that's a chosen limit. We have the ability to expand and modify any limit we want. So you can request a demo multiple times if you want, but I think once you get to several of them, we're going to reach out and find out what can we do to help you out. So feel free to go ahead and fill out the form. Feel free to go ahead and get the demo API key and unzip your own copy of Gloss and paste that API key in. I've already done it on this demo file for me. So when I hit Get Started, it's just going to take me right to the standard screen. So in this standard screen, we've preloaded for you 4 files, right? So you're going to have the very same 4 files I have for starters, but the ones I have in this copy of the demo file may already have some annotations on them. They've got that little watermark. I think if I look and see, I might find that I left some annotations behind potentially on other pages. Hopefully this is a pretty clean copy. You're going to see a couple of low code or getting to know Claris Connect ebooks from Claris. You're going to see a Jefferson Memorial Gateway Arch PDF from St. Louis, and you're going to see an old floor plan from my house from the original architect years ago that I threw in there, just to give you a sense of the range of document types you might put in there. But there's really no limit. I've put in historical texts, with thousands of pages. We have a client in the legal space who's put in exhibits and other kinds of materials from Discovery that have got thousands of pages and gigabytes of data and tons of text. The limits are really your imagination of if you could actually make the PDFs that you work with part of the workflow and not just something you store like a sidecar, what could you do? So let me show you. So for example, let's say you're in the construction or you're in some kind of project management or inspections and you need to take a floor plan or something that's been loaded into the solution and you want to mark up that floor plan in some way. Well, first of all, this isn't maybe a great case scenario. It's 1 page, so I'm not going to navigate. I don't really have much panning I need to do here. I might zoom in and out, right, with my zoom in out controls, or get it right back to the full size. Searching, I don't know if it's going to find any text. I don't think there's a text layer in this. So I don't think there's anything to search there, but I'm just going to start with a simple PDF that really is just a picture. And I'm going to go into annotation mode, which is what this little pencil up here is. When I do that, a card window is going to come up, and I'm now going to have a full suite of annotations. I got the same navigation tools I had before, but now I have annotation tools as well. So I can draw, and I can change color and style and thickness and do various types of complex overlaps and such between different lines that I might draw. I can select those drawings if I want to. Let me grab, actually, I sometimes forget which of these I need to grab to get back to selecting one. I don't know why I'm forgetting that. Greg, you can chime in and help me out here unless Kate is preventing us. But for some reason, I'm forgetting how to select an annotation. I know I can do it this way. Yep. Sometimes I don't know where to click to get rid of it. Once I select an annotation, I can resize it, I can reposition it, I can make modifications to it. So I have a lot of control over the annotations, much like you would if you used any other kind of PDF annotation tool you might be used to using on your desktop. I can delete an annotation. So we've got various drawing tools, we've got highlighting tools, right? So I might choose to have something where it's maybe a 50% yellow highlight, and then I could highlight an area if I want to. I've got a text highlighter, which if I had text in this, I could select sections of text. So we'll do that on another PDF. And then I have an eraser, which lets me partially erase parts of objects that I've drawn. I've got a signature tool. We're obviously no strangers to that in the FileMaker space. The nice thing about this, though, is it's not a field or an object that I have to put somewhere. It's a signature that I can then take and place potentially in different spots on my diagram. So if I needed people to be able to sign off on drawings, I could literally have them sign and then place it where it needs to go. I've got a stamping tool, which lets me do things like import an image from my computer and put it into the document. So if I do this and I go into here and I want to grab a picture of Milo, I can resize the picture of Milo and put it somewhere else in the drawing. So if I wanted to incorporate media from my computer, there's a stamp library. It's a generic stamp library. It does let you create custom stamps. But if I want to, I can use one of the standard stamps and I could say, this is approved. So perhaps I want to have like a standard, approved stamp that I put on any plans that are good, or maybe I want to do the opposite and put a stamp that something is not approved and possibly put that, in several places, as necessary to say this one's not approved, that's one not approved, and so on. You'll notice as I'm doing this, since I've left the left sidebar open, that all of these annotations are being stored as metadata in a layer inside the document. So I can navigate to select them. And if this is a multi-page document, I'd see sections by page here. So we'll see that here momentarily as well. Last couple tools here, last three tools here. We've got a sticky note tool. We're used to seeing sticky notes. There's some styles of sticky notes. This is the one we're used to seeing, right? When we look in Preview or a PDF editor, usually it looks like a little notepad and this is my text, and I can obviously select the text and do things like change the color of this. And I believe I have some options. I thought I had text options here, maybe not in this tool exactly. And then once I'm done and I close it, we've got this little thing you can hover over or click to display that text. You've got different shapes and sizes, and just like we showed before, if you select an item, you can modify its style. I think if I select this one, I can then change it. There we go. So all of these annotations are editable and repositionable as you go. I've got a drawing tool for text that lets me create text boxes. So I can say, this is my text. Here is where I have lots of control over font and style and size. So all the kinds of things you'd want. So you can actually put text annotations and again, resize and rotate these as necessary. I can also do a call out, which is more or less a text box with an arrow. So it's a little fancy, but this is a call out. And then I can take that and use that to possibly point at certain parts of my diagram. So a lot of these, in this example, you can see how they'd be really useful for a contractor, an inspector, or somebody who's working in a construction or an engineering environment where they need to take plans or drawings or diagrams or something and mark them up. And we've all had various workarounds over the years or plugins or add-ons that we've tried, which allow us to take an image and do some kind of rough markup on them. But as you'll see in a minute, we go well beyond just simple markup of an image. Finally, we have drawing tools, right? A whole bunch of different drawing tools, all the kinds of controls. I'll just grab one, for example, the polygon tool. And now I've got a polygon, multiple clicks, the kinds of steps you'd expect, control over the lines, control over the color, control over the thickness and positioning, and so on. Once I'm done with all of my annotations, I just hit save, and it's going to take all those annotations that I've made. It's going to save them back as an actual layer now to the PDF, not just in the web viewer, and put that back into my container field. So now I can view those annotations. I can interact with them. I can even navigate to them. I just can't edit them anymore. So if I click on Milo, you see it selects it, but I can't do anything with Milo. But if I click on, let's say, one of my notes, well, I can still interact with that note. Since I see a couple of chats here, I'm going to trust Kate that if there's a question or a comment on the fly, you'll interrupt me and just kind of jump in and throw it at me.
The one question came up was, is it kind of slow to open a PDF? Or are we
No,
seeing-
it's not. Let's put a big one in. All right. So this is a local file, right? So we're going to maybe have different experiences with me loading a local file into a local copy of the FileMaker file than me loading that local file into container field on a hosted file, right? That's going to have a lot to do with your computer, your connection, the size of the item, the speed of your server. But at least just let's show it for here. So I'm going to hit upload document, which is really just a prompt to insert a file to the container field. I'm going to try to find a nice big file. That's really big, but there's nothing fancy in it. Here's a FTS Advanced 85 meg file. It's as long as it takes it to move that container field into that data in the container field. And then it's transferring that file, now 85 megs from my container field up to the Gloss server so the Gloss server can render the first page and show it to me. So there is that initial population. If I though want to go, for example, to page 832, if you did that on a container field, you'd have to wait a long time for it to load the entire PDF to get to page 832. Whereas here, I can jump to any page I want. Boom, I'm there because it all has to do is find that, render it, and send it back to me. The other thing we do is we store the most recent copy of your uploaded PDF in a cache in a secure container within the Gloss server for up to 15 days. You know, you have the ability and control as a developer to tell us to purge it and not keep that copy, so that the next time you want to use Gloss to either view or render and make annotations, that you can upload it again. But we keep it up there so that the next time you go to use that PDF, if it hasn't changed since the last time you viewed or modified that PDF, it'll load the one it has, and there'll be no upload time for it to make its way to the server. So we've optimized it for what is, what we think of these days, I think, is the typical time that Claris FileMaker files hold on to temporary data on your, in your temporary folder, about 15 days of cache. But that is, the time period is under control, but do I want to use that optimization feature or not is available in a script, and you can basically tell it, hey, I'm done. I've downloaded my file, purge it. I don't want it being kept up there in a secure container. I want it to just be gone. Was there another question? And Greg, chime in, please, if you're allowed to, or chat there if I'm getting any of these answers wrong. Greg Lane, I should say, who's the Director of Technology at Skeleton Key, is really the godparent of Gloss. He helped identify the technology with the client. He helped implement it into their original solution, and he helped evolve it into the product that allowed us to make it available to other developers for their client solutions.
Hey, Mark, I was just going to mention on the performance issue, the behavior is somewhat different when you're working with a hosted file, right? So if you think of remote users who may be scattered all across the country or whatever, the performance limitation is going to be between the server and the Gloss server. And oftentimes that will get much better performance because the container data doesn't need to be transferred down to the client. It needs to be transferred from the FileMaker server to the Gloss server. And then it's all rendered in a web viewer as HTML. So it can be a much faster experience. Once you get the file initially loaded, it works much better.
Right, so let's take a look at that together. I just put into the chat for everybody in Zoom a URL that will take you to a FileMaker web interface for a hosted copy of this file, right? So my file that's locally has a couple of, has this FTS Advanced file in it that I put in. If you have your own copies that you've downloaded from Skeleton Key by filling out that form, you might have your own PDFs, and we don't see each other. All of our data is loaded with our individual API keys. All of it is secure and isolated from one another. There's no way I'm going to get your documents or you get mine, no matter how long they stay up there in the cache. But it really is that local file. And so there is that kind of double hit where you upload it to the container field on your local file and then upload it to Gloss that first time. In this case, this is a hosted development copy of Gloss. It's up at meetup.skdata.cloud at the standard URL for WebDirect. And the login name you want to use is just meetup, all lowercase. And when you sign in there, now we're all going to log in as the same person. So this is going to be a standard demo where we're all in the same file. You're all going to want to upload your own file and know that any of us can look at it. So choose your PDFs carefully. Make sure you're choosing something that is unique, that you can know which record is yours, and also that with confidence that there's nothing private that you wouldn't want to show up on the recording because I might stumble into it. When you do that, you'll see the gloss demo file. You can then authenticate again. And then you're going to be brought into the WebDirect interface, which looks just like the desktop interface. A little faster. And then you're going to see the same 4 standard files we start with. These happen to be annotated, right? We leave a little bit of a mess behind because we test in this file as well. But I'm going to upload a document here. So I'm going to go to my gloss demo, and I'm going to go to my source files, and I'm going to grab the Claris style guide from 2020. So I'm waiting for this transfer. But because that is the transfer to the container field on the hosted file, that's the real payment I'm making. Because this hosted file is in an environment that's very close to where we actually have the gloss server, the speed at which it's able to then render and share that with me is much quicker because it's all being done inside that cloud environment. So now I can go to these pages really quickly. And I can experiment with some other things. For example, I can use my text search. So how many places can I find the word apple? 9. And if I want to search for, I don't know, Helvetica, I don't know if Helvetica is going to be in there if I spell it correctly. Doesn't look like it's in there at all. But I'll search for the word heavy, which I know is on the screen right in front of me. And it found all 8 places. And if it's finding something that's got a lot of instances, you can start to navigate to where it found them while it's doing it. So that's an example of that text search we talked about. So as I sit here and work, and if any of you have logged in over the WebDirect interface to experiment for yourself beyond just your local copy, I'll see your other PDFs show up here. And in fact, you could see with me at the same time. This copy of the Dunn Department floor plan of my house doesn't have the same annotations, right? It's got some similar ones. Looks like I put a couple not approved and a signature on this, but I didn't put a picture of Milo and stuff. This is its own set of these files that's unique to this copy of this solution. But otherwise, the same functionality exists here. I can go into annotation mode. I can flip to a page that I want to modify. And now I can explore some of the annotation features that I couldn't do before, like the text highlighter. So same annotation fields, just now I can do searching and I can do some manipulation of the text highlighting because I have an actual file with a text layer that lets me do that. So that's the basics of Gloss. I mean, I also have an iPad over here. I could show that on my screen. You're going to see the same experience, the same interface. Just like this looks virtually identical to this. You shouldn't see any change at all. The only difference there is one's a WebDirect client, one's a FileMaker client on a Mac. The other one's going to be a Go client on a window, on an iPad, and then I could do this on a Windows FileMaker client. And inside that web viewer, I'm going to get the identical experience because it's all being rendered by the same engine into the web viewer. The technology this is based on, referencing back to Kate's opening and talking about the purpose of the meetup, is not something we invented. Let me see if I had that up here. I think I did on this other page. It's a technology called PSPDFKit. There's a lot of these libraries out there that allow you to manipulate PDFs. And they have various, bells and whistles and various types of documentation and pricing structures and such. This was the one that we landed on with this client. And by clicking on the web demo, you really get a taste of what's possible with the technology behind Gloss. Now, what I've shown you with Gloss is a relatively simple set of navigation and searching features and a relatively simple set of annotation features. Those were the features that we licensed to be able to offer this at scale to FileMaker developers to incorporate into their client solutions without having to do the coding or build the infrastructure or anything like that. All you have to do is copy and paste some stuff or use the add-on I'm going to show you and then get an API key and you're off and running. So you got the same annotation features here that I've shown you. Slightly different style for them, but technically the same. So it looks like they've got some newer versions of these that might be worth noting and seeing whether we want to update that. But effectively the exact same ones, just a slightly different look and feel for the actual icons. But they also have lots of other things that they can do. They've got signature features and editing features and conversion and redaction features and OCR features and things. And those are all things that we could add to the platform. They also have a very complex API with lots of power that we have leveraged with some clients to work directly with the technology. So in those cases, we have licensed the technology discreetly for their solution without this layer of gloss in front of it to allow us to interact. So that kind of leads me back to my slide deck for a minute to kind of give you a sense of what does gloss do differently than maybe what PSPDFKit can do. Let me knock out a couple of those slides. So we talked about this. You can go and download your own copy. For today, you can go to this meetup and log into the meetup and experiment. I saw at least one person uploading a document and doing that in the background. And so you can either play with a local copy for 30 days or you can play with the meetup copy for today's meetup. So let's give you a little bit of the background and talk a little bit about how we turn this from an idea to a problem. So this client needed to share PDFs across their team. And of course, there's lots of ways to do that: Dropbox, file servers, and so on, FileMaker containers. But they also wanted to link pages and annotations that they were making in those documents. First of all, they wanted to make those annotations, and they were doing those using third-party tools. But then they wanted to link them and group them and categorize them into business intelligence that they could use in the work that they do. And so they wanted to mix that with some of the other data they were creating in their FileMaker solution. They obviously wanted to search the file contents without having to take the files out of FileMaker solution. They wanted to add bookmarks. They wanted to add comments and tagging and all kinds of other ways to kind of create a much richer ecosystem of annotations and integration with their FileMaker solution around those files. Improve the intelligence, improve the utility, all from different kinds of devices. And they wanted to have some role-based permission. They were the kind of the poster child of, look, certain people need to be able to modify the master copy. Others need to be able to only view only and not make annotations to a copy. Others need to be able to take a copy and branch it off and make their own annotations, but not update the original. So they had a lot of different levels of permission, as well as different workflows in terms of whether they were just round trip looping and updating the original, or whether they were actually doing something unique with their own copy. So we identified the server-based technology stack, PSPDFKit. We incorporated some JavaScript on the client side in the web viewer, mixed in some untold hours of skeleton key awesomeness, a lot of it being Greg's, and then have Gloss to allow you to do all this stuff. So we went from this single tenant model, which we set up for them originally with FileMaker Pro and Server and such on the left, and Go and WebDirect, which is part of their whole mix, through the PSPDFKit technology to S3, where we do the temporary document storage and security. And we added a layer in front of it called Gloss, which is an API where we manage the subscriptions that we would resell to FileMaker developers, the security model for handling that and keeping each of your documents secure and only available to users of your API key, a logging mechanism so we can keep an eye on all of that, and a really simplified API. We took the API that is comprehensively available for PSPDFKit, which allows us to do all kinds of things like, put annotations on the document based on business rules, or take a particular annotation and link it to a particular record, not just a page. And we streamline that to offer a simplified set of capabilities like the ones I've shown you. There's just one more feature I want to show you about bookmarking that is really not an API feature, it's a FileMaker technique. But we added this layer, and now we can have multiple different tenants. Each client could be any of you with your own FileMaker Pro server and clients. And you could each have your own API key, go through the Gloss API, leverage the PSPDFKit functionality and the same S3 environment. The only change here is that you have a limited number of API calls, limited functionality, but from a licensing standpoint, it allowed us to get a larger PSPDFKit license and then mete out 5 licenses, 10 licenses, 3 licenses, whatever might be appropriate for all those different people who want to use it. Because the entry for the PSPDFKit technology wasn't trivial. I want to say Charles mentioned in his meetup that they investigated that technology. They understood it was a big step into that space, and it made sense for that client and for us to invest in it. Now we were saying, well, what else could we do with this now that we have this capacity? Is there a way that we could offer this on a fragmented basis, kind of a fractional basis to others. We obviously took it through an entire development process and issues and timelines, and went through a pricing exercise, a marketing and branding exercise, to eventually arrive at a demo that would allow you to go up and fill out that form and download it and use it. And instructions that allow you to go and test it and copy and paste and move it over into your own solution, as well as an FAQ that gives a lot of the basic questions people might have about security or secured PDFs or performance or keeping the files up there, and other things that often come up during meetups or conversation. So this might be a good time, if I haven't been doing a really good job keeping an eye on my time, does time allow me to show you guys the add-on or the bookmark feature?
We still have time, and there's a couple more questions. Let me get those. So one person asked, is it iOS friendly?
Yes, I will show you. Let me escape out of here. Let me switch over to my QuickTime player. Pretty sure I've got a movie recording going of my iPad. And I'm logged into, this is a file that we're doing some troubleshooting. We found as iOS was updated and as Go was updated, that a bug crept in that was causing some rendering issues in the web viewer. So I'm going to tap that again, hit the refresh button up here. So it looks like we still are fighting some bugs. So same interface you can see here. I have the ability here to hit the Annotate button. But it looks like we might still have the bug. So it worked. There's recordings of us and other demos with other meetups where it was working just fine. But I think we're still troubleshooting. I don't know, Greg, if you have anything to offer that explains a little bit about what we're up against here with the rendering and web viewer interactions on Go, and if we see any kind of any daylight. I can navigate, I can do my searching, but I don't know if every time I hit annotation, it's going to work.
Yeah,
there
Mark,
we go.
I think that was may have just been a temporary issue with that document. I believe it should be working.
Yeah, this one isn't working either.
Maybe I'm okay. That may be me then. I will. I'll follow up on it.
So the short answer is it was. We're not sure why it isn't, but Greg is on the hunt. You see it starting to load.
And essentially there was a change in the behavior of the way data URLs were handled in the web viewer that broke with the latest version of iOS. And that's the thing that we were working on fixing. We have a fix for it. It may not be in this particular file, but it is definitely working.
Awesome. Is it the full feature set, or are there any limitations in the iOS version?
Yeah,
the only limitation sorry, Mark, the only limitation I'd mention is if you're trying to use it on a phone, on an iPhone, just the form factor of a phone is not the best for doing annotations. It certainly works great for viewing PDFs, not as great for annotating just because of the size of the screen. On an iPad, it's a really nice experience.
Right. And one more question. I have 5,000 PDFs. Can I use Gloss for them?
I think it's actually.
You won't be able to load those into the demo. Yeah, you won't be able to load those into the demo. We do have a pricing page, and without me sneaking a peek at it, I think we've kind of landed on this idea that we're licensing by user, and we have some reasonable expectations on file size and file quantity. I don't know if those are spelled out discreetly. And we're kind of, it's almost like, let's let a problem be a problem. We're using S3. It's not a limitation on space. We can always add more storage. And we have the ability, if necessary, to even expand and replicate the environment if we needed to add more capacity. It really is more to do, so technically there's no limitation. And I don't think licensing wise, if I remember correctly, we have any strict hard limit on quantity of files. From our side, most of these files are stored in your FileMaker solution in your container field. It's only the ones you have recently in the last 15 days used with Gloss that are actually being stored in Gloss and cached for performance reasons, which again, you could override and eliminate. So really, you could have 1 million files in your FileMaker solution. We're only going to have a subset of them that are actually being interacted with Gloss, because Gloss is like a utility, right? It's just there to view or annotate and then write those annotations and such back to the container field. It's not a warehouse for storing your documents.
Awesome.
Other questions?
No other questions at
Right.
this time.
So let's do a little experiment. I'm going to make a new file. I'm just going to make this a blank file. Now, odds are you won't be doing this with a blank file, but I'm going to say blank add-on test. So it's going to come up with my standard window and a prompt for my, tables and fields, and I'm just going to say, okay. So now I've got this layout, the default one I get. I'm going to go to layout mode, and I'm going to go to add-ons, and I'm going to add the glass add-on. So I've already loaded the glass add-on into the package contents on my FileMaker, or the right folder in your computer for those. And I'm just going to choose that add-on, drag it over, drop it on the layout, resize it, just get it to fit in there. And again, like I said, this is the second time I've tried this, so it's in beta. Take this with a grain of salt. You guys are the first ones to see this, but we recognize, after talking to, one of the great things about these meetups has been lots of people who've developed products have been at these meetups, and they have a lot of friendly advice to offer. And a big, strong message we got was any friction in the using of a FileMaker add-on or any kind of technology that enhances FileMaker or plugin, any friction causes developers to just say, never mind, right? Like, you guys all know how hard it is sometimes to incorporate certain plugins and APIs. And if they're hard, you might not want to fight that battle, but if they're easy, you're more likely to experiment and try. So our hope is that very soon we'll release this add-on as an alternative for you, as opposed to having to do the copy and paste instructions that we have up on the website now that let you cannibalize parts of the demo file to move it into your other solution, which is only 20 steps, but it's 20 steps, right? That's a lot. So if I go now and I've put this in here, I go back to browse mode. I'm going to close the file. I'm going to open the file. And I'm going to run a script called request token. This is similar to the script, not exactly the same. It's similar to the script you'll get if you hit the getting started. So in this case, I'm going to hit request, and I'm going to put in an email address. I don't know. I think it'll let me do my regular one, if I'm not mistaken, Greg. I think it'll let me request an unlimited number. So I'm letting it request. It's sending that request up, and it's asking me to check my email and paste that in. So let me stop sharing my screen for a second. Let me go to my email client, which I don't think I had launched. Grab that API token and copy it out of my email. Yep, it's sitting there waiting for me. So it's a string of text. I'll go back to sharing my screen. I'm going to paste it into that box. And then I'm going to switch over to the main PDF view. So now I should have a working copy of Gloss in this brand new FileMaker file. I hit upload documents. I choose, let's say, one of these other files. Let's pick that table of size standards. Hit save. I'll get rid of this window. There it is. And now I can annotate it. You notice I don't have all the same buttons. I've got a little header problem here. There's too much header. But I am back into editing mode. And being able to do all the things I did before. I've got some cosmetic issues. Looks like there's an error here. Not sure if that's an error that looks like it saved it. So it's just troubleshooting we need to do. I don't have all the same buttons I had in the demo file, right? That other file had some other buttons we had that are related to the bookmark function I need to show you that were related to the interface itself of the demo. We had some help buttons up here that took you to the website pages on pricing and help. So this is stripped down to just the upload a document, send it up to the server, let you control whether or not it's going to keep it up there when we're done, bring it back after we're done making annotations, call the card window, control the toolbars and things if you want to customize the actual toolbar itself, flatten command. So it's really attempting to get rid of a lot of the demo file extras, the splash screens and such, and just give you the core elements that you would allow you then to say, okay, well, I don't want to use these container fields. I want to use my own container fields. So I don't need this web viewer on this screen. I'm going to move it to another screen, and I'm going to change, change the name there, and I'm going to point the scripts. And so it really lets you avoid all the movement of the code and lets you just customize and tweak the small pieces. And of course, if you don't already have container fields in your solution, it's giving you that, right? It's giving you the table structure you need for the documents and the settings. It's giving you the custom functions that you need. It's giving you the scripts that you need. It's giving you all those things in a way that shouldn't interfere with any of your existing structure because of the way we name things, but avoids all the extra copy and paste work that you would otherwise do. Now you're just restitching a couple of things depending on what you want to do. Going back really quickly, though, to the demo file, because you may have already experienced and discovered this. Let me quickly get, well, I might have an expired account. I don't know if it expired an account on me, Greg. Let's see if it did. Yeah, I'm going to go back to the browser to show you the bookmark feature. Oh, here it is. Hold on a second, folks. Last feature to show you, and then I think we're done with demo.
While you're getting there, there's one more question. Can I use PNGs? Can I use PNGs instead of PDFs for annotation purposes?
Great question. The short answer is no. The technology we've licensed is for PDFs. There's two other things though. One is we have not, but we could license the technology to allow us to annotate other types of documents, including images. So if you go up and explore the PSPDF Kit website, you'll see that one of the features they offer, like redaction and others, is image support. The workaround for that, obviously, is to take your PNGs and turn them into PDFs, right? So you could have PNGs in your container field, and you could add a script step that takes that PNG, converts it in the temp folder into a PDF through an output process, brings that back into another container field, pipes it down the way, and does everything. So you're not really annotating the PNG. The end result is a PDF, not a PNG. But we do have a scenario that came up shortly after we started sharing this with clients where they needed to do just that. They had images, they wanted all this stuff, but they were okay with those starting as PNGs and then turning into a PDF. It facilitated all this capability.
Cool. And there was one right above that. Can you repeat when there's a need for the round trip to the Gloss server?
So by default, the round trip is part of the save process when you are done making annotations. So if I come into a file like this and I hit annotate and I make any changes in here that I want to keep and I hit save, that save runs a script that you can modify that says, okay, I'm going to ask for the document back, and I'm going to put that document back into this container field for the record I started with. So the process of hitting annotate says, put me in annotation mode so I can make modifications, and the process of saving says, bring back that now modified file and overwrite the container field here with the new version. So that's the round trip that's built in by default in the way we've scripted it. But you can modify the scripts to say, bring the modified file back, but put it into a different container field. Maybe I never modify the original container field. It's only the source of the first lodge, and everything after that goes to this modified file. That way, if you ever needed to revert, you could. That could be a workflow. That original client we talked about had a pretty complex version of that, where they never wanted the master to be modified. The original file was an original. It stayed that way, almost like a golden copy. And from the very first annotation on, they were modifying the annotated copy, and then there were certain business rules that let them even spin off a third or a fourth version if they wanted to. But all of that was just simple FileMaker scripting based on who was doing it and where they started and what they were allowed to overwrite or not. And so simple answer is it's going to start out with the round trip, assuming you're just constantly editing and modifying the same document. Of course, we're not really modifying the document. We're adding an annotation layer to it. So you could technically take this file and get rid of all those annotations using the annotation tool built in, or using a third-party tool. Like I could come in here to this file and I could say, export it. And then once I export it to my local desktop, open it in preview, and all those same annotations will be selectable and deletable. So I'm not really making a permanent change to your PDF. Let me show you this bookmark feature real quick. So I'm just doing it here because I don't know what's going on with my demo file and my key. I think when I got that new one, I might have made my old one get terminated. So we recognize that whole part of integrating, right? So for us, the simplest integration was, hey, I'm on page 6, and I would like a bookmark to be able to create a record that says, take me to page 6. And I'd like to then be able to incorporate that bookmark into other parts of my workflow. Maybe I assign it to someone, please read this, or maybe I group bookmarks for page 6, 8, and 10 and group them into a parent record that says, these are all the references to that important attribution that I want to include in my manuscript, whatever your workflow is. So we have a little bookmark feature. I've got some preloaded bookmarks here. This is a bookmark that takes me to page 13. This is a bookmark that takes me to page 22. If I decide I want to go to page 7, and then I want to add a bookmark, this is page 7. I can give it a description. And this is really just a child table of bookmarks for this document. So it's up to you what the fields are and where else this might go and have a life inside the document, inside the file. This is page 7 for the demo. So again, I can go now back to page 22, or I can go to page 7. This is not an actual feature of PSPDFKit. This is us using every time we're constantly calling a variable that as we scroll through and interact with this web viewer that is keeping track of the page we're on. So all we're really doing is capturing that page number out of that variable and putting it into a record so that for that particular document, so that if we click on this, we run a script that says, hey, take us to that page number, and it tells the JavaScript and the web viewer to navigate for us. So it's a very simple FileMaker JavaScript technique on top of PSPDFKit, but it's the entry point into that web of connectivity that would allow this document to have a life beyond the borders of the container field or the web viewer itself into other parts of the data structure and workflow of your system. That feature, I don't believe, if I'm not mistaken, may or may not be in our add-on test, and that's another thing I need to check. Looks like we've lost that feature, and we should probably add that feature in, because that's really just another table. It's a nice feature to have and have it demonstrated for you. And it's really, in my experience, like all this other stuff is really cool, but that ability to say, okay, well, that's great that I can do all this fancy stuff with the PDF, but I don't know, man, it'd be really great if when I made an annotation on page 6, I could actually link to page 6 and then share that into a record which has a list of to-dos or a list of tasks or a list of issues to resolve on these plans or deliverables or whatever it is, or line items and billing associated with the drawings on page 7. I could go on, but that anchor to a page of a document into your FileMaker structure, I think, is a really powerful technique. So we'll be adding that to the add-on, I imagine. Only other stuff in my slide deck was pretty mundane. It's how do I get rid of the demo limitations? You license it. That's all on the website. I'm now curious, what do you see you could do with Gloss? Could this add value? What features would be missing? What's not clear? I'm happy to talk about that in the breakout room afterwards, if that makes sense, Kate. We will announce updates to Gloss on Twitter or blog. We'll email anyone who's downloaded a demo. We'll put it in the partner product announcements. My hope is the next announcement will be involved the fix to the iPad interface and the announcement of an add-on as an alternative method for installing it with instructions for that. That's everything I got.